What's up, guys? A bit of a different video today. This is a little bit of car talk. I know, like a lot of you, I'm into cars, and if you've been following the channel, you'll know that I had a 2020 Model 3 Performance Tesla back during COVID, and it was on a 3-year lease. Did a video on some things I liked, I didn't like, things like that about the car once the 3 years was up. And then I moved to a 2022 BMW X3M Competition. Absolutely amazing vehicle, but also not without its flaws and things that I thought could be improved upon. But anyways, as you can see, I'm no longer in a BMW. I am in another Model 3 Performance out of the dozen or so cars that my wife and I've collectively owned. That Model 3 that I had during COVID, it was the only car that literally gave me zero issues whatsoever. It was flawless for 3 years. Literally just get in it and drive, and that's it. That's the ideal car owning experience of just having a trouble-free vehicle. And unfortunately, the BMW did start to have a couple of random electrical problems that were getting on my nerves, and the warranty was about up. And that, in part, was one reason why I was ready to move on, but also because our financial goals between me and the wife, my wife, they've changed over the last 2.5 years or so. And so as a result, I'm in something a little bit more affordable. Now, it's not the most affordable option, but it is the kind of the sweet spot in terms of our budgeting and where we want to allocate our money and things like that. So this video is just going to be kind of a quick run through of all the bullet points on things that Tesla improved on this car compared to how I felt about the 2020 version of the Model 3 Performance. And I'm going to compare, how does this car, how does it fare? What does it do better? What does it not do as well compared with the X3M? So let's go ahead and get into all of that good stuff. So we're going to start off with things that I think that this car does better than the previous Model 3 Performance. Basically everything, spoiler. This car is the overhauled Highland refresh model that they released in 2024. And essentially they got to, from the video that I watched with the engineers at Tesla, it seems like they kind of had their time. They got to really take their time and do this car exactly the way that they wanted to, whereas the previous one was just sort of like the normal Tesla Model 3 with maybe a stronger motor or something. I don't really know all the specs on it, but anyways, they really kind of got to take their time and do this one a bit more bespoke and, you know, kind of focused in on the performance aspects of it. So let's go ahead and get into what do I think this car does better than the previous Model 3 that I owned. First and foremost, it's faster. It's quite a bit quicker, especially over 60 miles an hour. The car continues to pull instead of kind of falling on its face at around 60. So right off the bat, it's a faster car. We're talking 0 to 60 in 2.8, 2.9 seconds. If you can get the battery preheated, preconditioned as if it's going to charge, it'll heat up the battery. You can get a little bit extra power out of it that way and get down into that 2.6, 2.7 range, and kind of in the mid to high 10s in the quarter mile, which is crazy for the price of these cars. That is elite supercar territory right there. The seats in this car are better. I love the ventilated seats. It's air-conditioned ventilation instead of just blowing lukewarm air. The bucket seats have a lot more support than the previous car did, and honestly, I feel like they're more comfortable as a result of that. The suspension in this car is so much more comfortable. It's got the adaptive suspension. You can have 2 different modes, and it's always measuring something with the suspension. I don't really know. All I know is it is a lot more comfortable than the previous Tesla was. Next thing, this car is much quieter than the previous one. It's about 3 decibels quieter, and if you know anything about how decibels work, you'll realize that it's about half as loud as it would be in the previous version. Yeah, listen to how quiet this is. I'm going 40 miles an hour, and it's just whisper quiet inside this car. And I read somewhere a comment, it's basically the equivalent of going from like a Dodge Ram TRX to a Mercedes E-Class, which it's a pretty substantial drop in volume there. So most noticeably, it's on the interstate. It's a lot less wind noise, a lot less road noise. It's just overall a much more comfortable and quiet place to be. Next, the cameras are higher resolution on this car, and most noticeably is on the front camera for the security camera footage and the dash cam footage. It's about twice the resolution as on the older Tesla, and the rear camera is a little bit wider of a resolution, but not nearly as substantial as the resolution bump on the front camera. Next upgrade is this car has some carbon fiber trim on the inside, and the aesthetics on the outside with the front and rear bumper are more aggressive as well. The previous Tesla Model 3, the performance version, only had like the kind of like the lip carbon fiber spoiler, which was good and well and all that, but other than that, it looked exactly like your regular old Model 3. And for the $10,000 price gap between the two vehicles, you would think that you would get something to sort of differentiate it from the non-performance version, but that just wasn't the case, unfortunately. Like BMW and Audi, they give you the RS versions of these cars, the M versions of these cars, and they have more aggressive styling on the outside as well as on the inside of those cars. So I'm glad that Tesla is actually putting a little bit more effort in the external styling of the cars with the more aggressive front end. Kind of looks a little bit like the Tesla Roadster, and the back has sort of a more aggressive diffuser going on. So it's nice that they have better aesthetics on the outside that sort of differentiate it from the non-performance versions. Next, compared to the previous version of the Model 3 Performance, this one has forged wheels, and they're lighter and they're stronger than the previous Model 3 Performance. And these are a little over 20 pounds each, and it's nice that they took that initiative to reduce that unsprung mass on the wheels, because anytime you can do that, it's an easy way to improve acceleration without adding more power. It might just be placebo, but I believe the screen on this car compared to the previous version, I think it's a higher resolution, just a little bit sharper of an image, but absolutely I know that this thing is much more responsive and snappy and just more fluid and feels much better to navigate, especially like on the navigation part of the screen. Everything just feels smooth as glass. Like it's almost like you're using an iPad. That's kind of the level of smoothness and kind of snappiness that we're talking about. Next, lighting on the inside. That's got this LED strip that runs across the dash and the doors, and you can change it to whatever color you want. They didn't have to do that, but it's a cool little accent nonetheless, and kind of lets you have a little bit. I mean, the interior of this car is extremely stripped down, so it's nice that they've added a little bit of accent there where they can. On the outside, speaking of lighting, this car has the LED matrix headlights that the previous version, at least the one that I had, it did not have the matrix headlights. If you're not familiar with matrix headlights, basically it's when you're driving down the road, you're using your high beams almost all the time, and the way that they work is they can dim certain parts of the beam by disabling certain LEDs. I guess that's maybe how it works. I'm not really sure. All I know is when you're driving down the road, you've got your big, your light output, but it dims the part of the beam that is where oncoming cars or the car in front of you are physically located. So you've kind of got this wall of light that wraps around the cars, and it follows them. It tracks them very accurately, and it's really impressive to see. So that's another cool little touch that the previous version that I had didn't have. Next, my previous one didn't have a power trunk. I had the little spring-loaded things that helped it pop open, but it just made it that much harder to close. This one has the power trunk, so you can open and close it with the phone app or with the control on the screen. And then there's a button on the trunk lid. If you've got it open, you can push it and it'll close it for you, so that's nice. Slightly better range in this one compared to the previous version, but it's not really something that I'm focusing on that much. I don't really road trip or take this car out of town very much. This mostly just stays as my daily commuter here around town, but it's nice that it has a little bit better range, and I think it charges a little bit quicker than the previous version, up to around 50% battery, but it's really, that's not a big selling feature for me. What could be a big selling point though is the heat pump that this car has that my previous one did not. It means the car is a little bit more efficient in the wintertime when it gets colder, because it's not having to rely on heating up the battery to get the cabin temperature air warmed up. This car has hardware 4, so it's more accurate in terms of the self-driving and the autopilot features and stuff like that. I know that people were kind of a little bit upset that they removed the radar stuff, but after almost a month of using the free trial of the full self-driving, I am extremely impressed at how accurate everything works with that. It's very, very impressive. This ultra red paint job, I think, is absolutely the best paint color that Tesla offer. While it's not quite as nice as the Marina Bay Blue Metallic that the X3 had, I feel like this is Tesla's best color, and once you get it paint corrected and greased up nice with some wax or some ceramic, this paint really pops and has great depth to it. Next, overall fit and finish is excellent in this car. The interior, while by no means a luxury interior the way that the BMW was or the wife's XC90 Volvo, for what you do get, everything is very well put together. The materials are good. I like the Alcantara door cards and the kind of the vegan leather, whatever this is. On all the major touch points, of course, you've got the big carbon fiber strip across the dash, which is nice, but all of the major touch points are the soft vegan leather or the Alcantara, like on the door cards. So no complaints with the material quality or the fit and finish. There's no rattles, squeaks, or anything like that. But then again, my 2020, it was also very, very well put together, and just like the 2020 version, this car, on the outside, there's no panel gaps, there's no paint discoloration issues or anything like that. Everything is just exactly the way it should be. Next, the live traffic data on this car is far more accurate than it was on the previous version, and I don't know if that's just a result of more Teslas being on the road, or if Tesla switched to a third-party traffic data source. But regardless of that, I can pull up Google Maps or Waze or whatever on my phone, and the traffic information on the screen matches that of the phone, whereas on the 2020 that I had, it was never right, and it made the actual routing and navigation around the city, it made it inaccurate compared to what I should be doing in terms of the route planning and things like that. So I'm glad to see that the maps and the traffic data are more up to date. Lastly, and I don't know if this is just a result of the faster hardware 4 in here, but if you want to pull up Sentry events from the security cameras and things like that on the actual car's computer, it pulls up much faster than it did on the 2020. It took forever, and it was extremely slow to pull up the footage. And on this, it's lickety split. It's really nice, and I like to see that. All right, let's talk about what I like about this car compared to the BMW. In other words, kind of things that this car does better than the BMW. First and foremost, you don't have to pay for gas. I was spending over $300 a month on the BMW to keep that thing gassed up, and that's a lot of money. Now, I know that not everyone's driving situation is like mine, but that's about what I was spending on gas. It's not a fuel efficient car. That S58, that twin turbo engine, it sucks fuel. It's got 2 high pressure fuel pumps on that motor, and it uses every bit that it can get. So I'm saving a lot of money by not having to get gas. Insurance is about $40 cheaper on this car compared to the BMW, and again, that doesn't really sound like much, but it adds up, and that $40, that'll pay for Spotify, and it'll pay for Netflix with a little bit left over. So extra savings is always nice there. Next, the car payments, much cheaper in this. No surprise, the BMW is a luxury SUV built in a different market segment compared to this Tesla, and it should be a more fair comparison comparing the Model S, like a Plaid or something like that, to the BMW. But I'm just working with what I've had direct experience with, and this car is about $830 a month for payments, and the BMW was around $1,100 a month. So big jump there. And again, I'll go into the money breakdown and all the numbers and things like that in a separate video if you guys are interested in that. Next, this car is much faster than the BMW. Now, the BMW was no slouch. It could hit 60 in 3.5, 3.6-ish seconds, according to the Draggy. But there was a whole process to that. The launch control was kind of picky on all the different, the checklists that you had to go through. But just normal driving around town, there was a lot of turbo lag, especially from a stop, and it wasn't as fast as the numbers on paper would lead you to believe. Once the car is moving and you get into boost, it pulls really well, but the Tesla is just fast everywhere. And for daily driving, that, to me, it makes a much bigger impact on just the overall fun factor of the driving experience. The all-wheel drive system in this car is far better than the xDrive in the BMW. The BMW was much more rear bias, so if it's wet outside, that back end would push around, and you could get in trouble even with stability control turned on. But with the Tesla, the ability for it to do the torque vectoring with the electric motors just massively faster than what an electronic differential is capable of doing. It basically results in this car being far more capable when the road conditions aren't ideal. Next, the Tesla really doesn't have any kind of maintenance other than brake pads and tires and windshield washer fluid. That's about it. The BMW had very expensive oil changes. I had an expensive brake fluid change, and those take hours to do. Over half my day when I would have to take it in for maintenance. So not having to pay for that or deal with that hassle is another nice added bonus here. The ride comfort in this car is much better than the BMW. Now, the BMW was better than the previous version of the Model 3, but it was still a firm ride. It wasn't harsh the way that the previous Tesla was, but it wasn't soft and comfortable the way that this is. This is still a sporty ride, and it's still a firm ride, but it's comfortable in a way that the BMW was not. Next, the lane keep assist in this car is much better, and I don't think that's probably surprising anyone, but that's one of the added benefits of just having a Tesla, is that it can navigate just staying in the lane. Just the basic autopilot that all of them get is better than what the BMW has. It's more accurate. It's easier. It can take turns easier. The BMW was mostly hands-free, but if there were big turns and things like that into the road, you did still have to kind of babysit the system a little bit. Because this is an EV, the acceleration in this car is completely silent, and it does not draw any attention, whereas in the X3, it was a loud vehicle. It had the Dynon exhaust on there. It had an aftermarket mid-pipe, and it made a lot of noise, a lot of cool noises nonetheless, but it made a lot of noise when you were accelerating, so it did draw a lot of attention, whereas on this, you can be, getting on it and it's completely silent, so you're not drawing any unwanted attention. Next, the cool seats in this car are much better than those in the BMW. I think the BMW basically kind of blew a little bit of lukewarm room cabin temperature air, but it wasn't much. It really wasn't very impressive at all. And this car, however, it blows cold air-conditioned air, and it feels much better. The steering feel on this car is a little bit better than on the BMW. I think the BMW, it was still accurate and precise, but it didn't have any kind of feedback to it. It felt almost like a video game where you're steering the car, but you're not getting any sort of actual feedback from the road or anything like that. And this car, again, it's nice, it's quick, it's direct. You can put it exactly where you want it, but you do get a little bit more feedback. The phone app on this car, to no one's surprise, is absolutely next level compared to the BMW. The BMW was a paid upgrade option that the previous owner that he got, and it lets you remote start to do the climate control, and it can do sort of a 360 camera view. It takes pictures and kind of stitches them together, but that's about it. And it gives you like your, trip statistics in terms of miles per gallon and things like that. But on the Tesla, you get way better features. You get a lot more capabilities in terms of the camera system in the car, you can view it almost like a Ring camera or like your smart doorbell, whatever. It pulls up within 5 or 6 seconds. It's really quick, and it's a live feed instead of just kind of these weird stitched together photos. So it's nice that you can view live footage, and if you've got any sort of security events that get triggered from proximity or whatever, you can actually go in and view the footage of those events or your dash cam footage and things like that, all in the app, and it's all really fast too. The main thing I noticed between the two different apps though is that the Tesla app is instantaneous. When you send a command to the car, it is instant. If you want to open the trunk, if you want to start the climate control, unlock the doors, whatever, it's literally the second that you push the button, it happens on the car. Whereas on the BMW, it could take 10, 20, sometimes even 30 seconds for a command on the smartphone to reach the car. And speaking of the security cameras, the BMW really didn't have that. It would capture footage if it detected that you were in a crash, but I did have to use a third-party dash cam for kind of my own peace of mind when driving the car. Whereas on this one, you've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so I think it's like 7 cameras on this car that they're recording all the time. So if there's anything that happens, you've got multiple angles of any sort of events that happen on the road, or when you're parked and anything happens while you're not in the car, you have access to all of that stuff. So again, it's really nice to have that sort of peace of mind without having to use third-party solutions. Next, this car and all Teslas have cabin overheat protection. I really enjoyed that with the previous Tesla. I always used to have this like weird, it's like a weird flex where cabin overheat protection basically means that I never have any sort of melted chapstick in the car, because the overheat protection will kick on the AC to prevent the car from exceeding a cabin temperature of either 90, 95, or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So depending on what temperature you want the car to remain when you're parked, you can have that automatically kick on, and it's really handy. Now, the only caveat to that is that once the battery on the car reaches 20%, it will disable cabin overheat protection and it will disable Sentry mode, because it doesn't want you to let that stuff run the battery down lower than what you would need to get to charging or whatever. Last but not least, full self-driving. Naturally, the BMW does not have that. I don't think hardly any cars have that besides the Teslas, and as I mentioned earlier, it works shockingly well. Now, it's not perfect. It is a little bit conservative, a little bit, kind of grandma driving, but it's nice that it's overly cautious instead of overly aggressive. And it does have some different settings that you can tweak in terms of the behavior, what lane it wants to be in, things like that. But just overall, it's extremely accurate. It navigates just random things like cars on the shoulder, pedestrians, things like that. It's handled all of that exceptionally well. Now, personally, I'm not going to be paying $100 a month for that. I really enjoy driving the car, but if you're someone who either does long highway commutes, let it handle that boring driving for you, absolutely I would do that. Or if you're someone who has maybe a physical handicap that makes driving a little bit more challenging, I think that solutions like that are outstanding and invaluable. Or if you're someone who's maybe like getting on up there in age, or maybe you've got your parent or your grandparent who's getting up there in age, and it's starting to be around that time when you're talking about maybe it's time to take away grandma or grandpa's car keys. We've been there with our families. Maybe that's something that can help extend their freedom instead of just a typical car that would be more dangerous for them to be in once they are kind of in those elderly ages. All right, wrapping up here, we're going to talk about what made the BMW better than this car. And again, the X3M competition, that's like the top of the food chain for the performance midsize SUV. There's really nothing in its category or class that can touch it other than, well, I guess it's not yet, but once the Rivian R3 or R2 S, once they start building the smaller Rivian SUV, and you get the quad motor version of that, or maybe the triple motor version of that, I think that will be a serious contender. But other than a Model X Plaid, there's really nothing out there in terms of like the mid-size SUVs. Oh, and maybe the Lucid Gravity. Those are fast too. There's not a whole lot in the small mid-size SUV that can compete with the X3M. So one thing that I liked about that is the exclusivity. I was one of 3 X3M owners in my city, and I was the only one with the blue one. So if you saw a blue X3M competition driving around town, you knew who it was, for better or for worse. There are a million Teslas in our city and every other major metro area. Now there's not as many performance models, and there's even fewer that are in this ultra red color, but I'm under no illusion that I'm in anything, you know, special or unique here. This is a mass-produced vehicle, and the BMW M cars, while not exactly crazy rare, they are much lower volume produced vehicles, and they're more special vehicles to be in on the road. Being an SUV, the X3 had the big storage area in the back. Now it's not as deep as the trunk of the Tesla, and the Tesla does have the sub trunk area and the front trunk, the frunk. But you do have the much bigger opening with the tailgate being able to be opened up, and you can fold down both seats, so you have just a bigger volume of cargo storage in the X3 if you need it. Like I think I mentioned earlier, the interior fit, finish, and materials on the BMW are just on a completely different level of quality. You've got the real leather in there. It feels better. It smells better. You have much more carbon fiber everywhere on the doors, on the dash, on the little center console. The rear doors had big carbon fiber panels on there. You still had the LED strip and all that good stuff, but overall it was just a much nicer interior in basically every way. Next, the BMW had a heads-up display. I would love to have gotten something like that in this car, but alas, we don't have that, and it was nice to just always be able to have kind of that mission critical driving data on the screen or on the windshield where you could see it without having to take your eyes off the road. So I'm definitely going to be missing that. Now, although the BMW did have quite a few safety features and driving assistance features, the safety nannies in the BMW were far less intrusive and annoying than the Teslas. I think that they've kind of gotten a little bit better with what you can and can't disable in terms of the safety features on the Tesla. It's almost like they let you turn just about everything except the ones that, you know, keep you from getting killed if you're not paying attention. They let you turn a lot of stuff off now, and I'm glad to see them giving you a little bit more freedom in that regard. But the BMW, it wouldn't like beep at you or make any loud noises if you're kind of like going off the road. It'd kind of do the wheel vibration if you were going off on the shoulder, but that's about it. And it didn't make any noise when you activate the adaptive cruise. It just turns it on. You got 2 little LEDs on the steering wheel giving you an indication of whether it's good to go or if you need to touch the steering wheel to kind of make sure that you're still paying attention and all that. But overall, it's a little bit less annoying in terms of the safety nannies compared to this car and the previous Tesla. Now, despite not being as fast as the Teslas, the BMW produced power in a very exciting and theatrical way. You've got both of these turbos spooling up, and with the aftermarket intakes that I had on the car the previous owner put on there, you get this big spooling sounds and you get the blow-off sounds. You've got the exhaust, you've got the downshifting and kind of the burbles and things like that the car would make when downshifting. Overall, it was just a much more emotional and visceral driving experience, and for a lot of car guys, that's like mission critical. That is the most important thing. But for me, although I really enjoyed it, I thought that when I was leaving the 2020 Tesla, I thought that that was what I valued the most. And then once I had it with the BMW, it turns out it wasn't as important as I thought it was. Next, the BMW had a full-size spare in the back, and again, that was an optional feature that the previous owner got, and it raised the deck on the rear about 2 inches or so up. And it was nice to have a full-size spare. It was nice to have that peace of mind if we were going out of town in the car. Next, the BMW had a sunroof, and I missed that. Even though this does have the glass roof, being able to open it up and have the cool air coming in without having to have the windows down, During certain parts of the year, that's always nice, and again, I will miss that. The BMW had a full 360-degree camera system, and although this has a lot of cameras and does a very good job of sort of approximating where everything is around you, like parking lines, curbs, other cars, things like that, it was always nice to be able to actually see what the cameras see with the bird's eye view when parking and things like that. So I'm gonna miss that, although the system in this car is very good and it's very accurate. I still kind of miss having the ability to physically see what the cameras see. When it comes to range, the BMW was able to get right around 390 miles to a full tank of gas. It got me from Birmingham to Louisville for the Louder Than Life show the month after I got the car. I was able to get all the way there. It was right around 390 miles on a full tank of gas. And this car, you're looking at, assuming you're driving roughly 70 miles an hour on the interstate, you're looking at roughly 280 to 300 miles of range. Although putting the long range wheels or just smaller wheels in general on this car can net you between 40 and 50 extra miles of range. So if you do want more range out of this car, you can go down to a slightly smaller wheel and get improvements there. But what you can't do is get the extra acceleration the way that this car has if you do go for the long range version of the Tesla. So it's nice that you can get the acceleration and the extra power and speed with this car and then get extra range of the long range version if you change wheels, but you can't go you can't do vice versa if you go with the long range version of the Tesla. You can't just make it faster. All right, so those are my bullet point talking points comparing this car to the previous Model 3 Performance and to the BMW X3M competition. So yeah, those are some of the bullet points on the pros and cons of how these cars compare and contrast and the differences. And again, I think that the previous version of the Model 3 Performance, I still think that it's a great car, absolute bargain at this point. You can find them used for not much money at all. And if you want the newer features and some of the upgraded stuff that I talked about in the video, I think that these new Highland versions are also just crazy bang for the buck, considering the performance that they offer. However, it should be noted that at this point you can find a used X3M competition for right around the same price as this car goes for. And it kind of sounds crazy, but the depreciation on the luxury SUV is very aggressive, and I ended up trading mine in for right around what the MSRP of this car is, assuming that you don't get the EV tax credit, which is going away here at the end of this month anyway. So we're talking about right there around that $55,000, $56,000 price point. You can pick up an X3M competition with 30,000 miles on it or so. So if you do want to get into something like that, you're right there in the same ballpark price-wise. But again, I'll go through all of the numbers and the nitty-gritty details on all that stuff in a different video. And lastly, I have been collecting questions from friends, family, coworkers, and also questions that I got when I had my first Tesla, that I'll be going through some of the questions that people have been asking me about my previous one, about this one. And even though these cars have been around for a long time now, there's still a lot of either misinformation or just lack of understanding about how a lot of the stuff with just EVs in general, not just Teslas, on how all that stuff works. So I'll do a separate video on all the questions that I've gotten about the Teslas and go through some of that stuff in another video. And again, don't worry, I'm not turning it into a Tesla channel or anything like that. This is just sort of a little fun side thing that I'm just doing because I enjoy it, and if you enjoy it, great. And if you're someone who maybe has no interest in guitar equipment reviews or anything like that, but you've come here because the algorithm has pointed you here for EV research or the BMW or whatever, welcome to the channel. Anyways, that will wrap up this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Bye.